We are live.
Perfect. Welcome, family, friends, comrades, and community in Idaho. We're super excited to spend a few moments with you. As you all probably already know, Idaho Gives is well underway, and we wanted to take a chance just to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. Before we dive in, just some quick introductions. I'm Chelsea Gaynor Lincoln, Executive Director of Add the Words Idaho. I am coming to you from the ancestral lands and unceded territory of the Shoshone-Bannock, Shoshone-Paiute tribes, currently called Caldwell, Idaho. And I'll kick it over to Jen to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Chelsea. My name is Jennifer Martinez. I'm the Political Director for Add the Words Idaho, and my pronouns are she, hers, and Aya. Also coming to you from the unceded lands of the Shoshone-Paiute and Shoshone-Bannock peoples, which is Boise, Idaho. And Ray?
Hi, I just realized I just moved and I don't know whose stolen land I'm on, so I need to look that up right after this. But my name is Saray. I exclusively use they, them pronouns. And yeah, this has been my first year working as a legislative strategist with Add the Words, and it's been really great so far.
Thank you so much, both of those. Yeah, I just thought about that. I don't know whose land you're on either, friends. So you're gonna
right?
Let us know once you get that figured out. Well, we wanted to come to you today and just share a little bit about the work we've been doing and how we've been doing it. As a lot of you followers have known and supporters have known, Add the Word has been around for a while. We come from a long history of working for equity and lived equality in the state of Idaho. Originally, the mission being to update the Idaho Human Rights Act to include sexual orientation and gender identity, extending protection from discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations. It's been a few years now that I have been in leadership, and we've really taken an internal shift and internal reflections on the way we did the work, how we did the work, and who was leading the work. And to that end, we've come to the realization and understanding that we wanted to expand our ability of being able to navigate and serve our community. So now, instead of being only focused on one piece of legislation, we've really opened up the gates. Switching over to a nonprofit was the first part of that. It's allowed us to apply for grants and use that money to serve our community members directly. And then we've also been more community centric and listening to the needs of our community, what they were looking for, what they were needing, whether it is organizing locally, engaging in legislative session, what it looks like during Pride Month to feel held and supported by fellow community members. And that's kind of where our reflections have led us. We're constantly still learning, still broadening our horizons, and certainly always trying to do better. And that goes with making mistakes and learning from our strides and kind of leaning into that each and every step of the way. So we feel really good about where we're going and deeply appreciative of the shoulders that we know we're standing on as we move forward in our movement work. Today, we'll talk a little bit just about some of the numbers and what finances and what your support and contribution to Add the Words looks like in real life and real action and in real time. And then after that, we're going to hear a little bit about just the chaos and what's been endured during this legislative session. As I had mentioned before, we've been utilizing our money to give back to community, and we kind of switched to a nonprofit with that in mind. We all know that even before the pandemic hit, especially LGBT youth are at high risk for homelessness and needing other resources and help. We already know that folks from communities of color are disproportionately impacted when it comes to not having the same opportunities and just that wealth that flows through, whether it's from jobs or generations or what have you. And we've definitely seen a need for mutual aid increase significantly during the pandemic. And Jen was a huge reason that we were able to develop a mutual aid model that we felt comfortable with. And we've continued that and shifted as necessary from mutual aid to emergency stipends, depending on what the needs of community were. So Jen, if I can kick it over you to dive into a little bit about that, kind of where folks are giving their money and what it's going to, I would love for you to share more.
Totally. I'm happy to share more. I'm just a nerd with spreadsheets, so I'm glad that that came to good use this last year. So where to start? Well, first, just want to start off by thanking everyone who's donated money to the organization over the last year, whether through Venmo, through Cash App, through PayPal, checks. All of that is so greatly appreciated, and we wouldn't be here without you. And just want to highlight again that like folks like Chelsea and myself are not paid. Like we are just here as volunteers. We raise money to give it back out to community. And when we do hire folks like Ray and or Nisha Newton, which many of you know, we're hiring directly from community, from impacted community, from folks who do work with liberation in mind, which is where we operate out of. I'm going to give you some numbers really quick as well. Want to just name that just from direct donations from people like you, we were able to bring in around $30,000 or so just in direct donations. So we are just so grateful for you again, and just want to shout out the Pride Foundation for giving us grant money and for allowing us to use that for mutual aid and for whatever was needed for our community to be able to just survive. The pandemic was hard for everyone, but it was especially hard for folks who exist on the margins of our society, historically marginalized communities, which obviously includes LGBTQ, queer, trans folks, but intersect those identities with a different identity such as race, or intersect that with a different intersection such as different ability levels, whether or not you're able to have housing. All of these different things really came and impacted our community in Idaho in pretty horrible ways, honestly. And so we were just looking around and realizing that there was nothing that we were seeing that was directly targeting mutual aid with no strings attached, right? So Chelsea and I had this moment where we were just like, all right, we're going to do the thing. And so shout out to Amita Swadin, an organizer from Southern California who developed the mutual aid model we use now, where we don't need your pay stubs. We don't need your social security. We don't need any. All we need to know is, are you from an impacted community and how much do you need? And we're going to do our best using a formula that caps the amount, because if we gave everyone what they asked for, like, we would never have anything, right? But what can we give based on what we're able to bring in? And so we're able to develop this model. We'll link our website in the comments, but that's really how we were able to then turn around and give out $25,500 or so in direct mutual aid for folks who applied through our mutual aid process. And then we shifted that towards the election in November, because we were also hearing a lot of folks who were just scared to go grocery shopping, who were scared to leave their home, because that was we remember it was a very tense time for so many of us who are very clearly not white, cisgendered, heterosexual men, right? And so we were able then to give out about 2,100 or so in emergency stipends to folks as well, just so that they could order groceries or pay for gas to go somewhere safer for a few days. And so that's most of our money went directly back to community. And that's still where we're trying to operate out of. We have been able to shift some of that into legislative work this year, which I'm going to let Chelsea introduce what that model kind of looks like. And then we'll have Ray, who's really been leading so many of these efforts on the ground. On the ground, we mean Zoom, because we weren't sending anyone to the State House with reason. But I'm going to shift it back to Chelsea. But those are just some of the rough numbers to give you an idea of where all of our money went.
Thank you so much, Jen. I just have such a deep appreciation for the way Jen's brain works, and that we could see this need, late phone calls of being like, oh shit, our family, our siblings, our community needs something. What are we going to do? People need a place to put money so that we can turn around and give it back to siblings who are in trouble. And Jen went searching and she found something, and then she does her magic in the Excel spreadsheets. And my brain doesn't work that way. It looks pretty when she gets done. So just deep appreciation for Jen applying that again, all volunteer, and making sure that that was happening so we could get folks the money that they needed without barriers, hoops and ladders and other requirements that seem kind of frivolous when people are just in desperate need. Legislative session, like any other time, tends to be a little bit chaotic, and And certainly 2021 had no shortage of chaos. What it did create was new barriers for safety, and we really wanted to still prioritize our community members. We know people wanted to rally. We know people wanted to apply pressure and to be there in person and to, stand up in the galleries and look down as they try to dismantle more and more rights. We know that. We wanted to be there with all of you too. But we wanted to prioritize people's health and safety first and foremost, especially the most vulnerable among us. And so along with our comrades from cross movement work, like Legal Voice, ACLU Idaho, Planned Parenthood, and others, we decided collectively that we were going to do everything we could to stay remote. And that included trying to navigate testifying remotely and all of that. And that was a community collective effort. And if you're in community, you know that that's how we were prioritizing things and why. And when we looked at our actions and what we were going to be able to do, we knew that we weren't going to be able to carry it alone. And we were lucky enough to bring on Saray and to bring on Nisha Newton, who couldn't be with us here today. And their work has been tremendous and steadfast. If you've connected with one of our social media outlets, likely the person on the other side of that was Ray or Nisha, getting you the information you needed, getting you connected to whatever website link you were missing, to make sure you knew what hearing dates were happening and what talking points you might need to feel supported and confident giving your testimony. So Saray, if you wouldn't mind, I would love for you just to share a little bit about how you and Nisha have prioritized your work, how you've been navigating moving towards liberation, and anything else that feels like you want to share right now that's coming up for you.
Yeah, thank you. So this was honestly my first year really being directly engaged in the legislative process like this. And it was quite the learning experience for sure. And I feel so grateful for the folks that I was working with who were able to walk me through it and give me so much assistance and support throughout it, especially Niche. Mainly what we did was watching all the bills that were coming up and being introduced as they're being introduced, and then just tracking them as legislators were excessively messy and would introduce them, pull them, reintroduce them, and trying to make it as accessible to you folks as possible, which was definitely an uphill battle at times. But just, yeah, trying to find like different ways to make it accessible with the quick links, the different testimony trainings that we collaborated with ACLU and Planned Parenthood and some of the other organizations as well. It was really great to see so many folks engage and like want to be engaged and get their homies and their comrades engaged. Like near the end of the session, we saw a lot of youth come up and turn out ready to support and organize as well, which honestly I'm so grateful for, because I feel like a lot of us were just really drained and kind of like at capacity. And so it just kind of felt like a breath of fresh air. I know for Nisha and I especially, to like see youth and community just like show up big for that final push. It was kind of exhausting at the end. There were a couple bills that we saw passed that we were really advocating against. But again, I'm just grateful that we were in beloved community for all of that and able to just plug back in with each other, continue like supporting and loving on each other. Honestly, like I would not have made it through this without y'all and like the other folks that we were collaborating and working with. I just have like a whole new appreciation and respect for community and the way we work, the way we do check-ins and make sure that we aren't functioning beyond our capacity, reaching out to other folks for support. Again, shout out youth and all these folks that came out for the final push that we saw happen. But yeah, I'm just really grateful for y'all.
Oh, that gives me all the feels. We spent a lot of time on Slack, a lot of time on Zoom, and Saray and Nisha, especially Nisha, has done such a tremendous job of modeling what it looks like to check in. I know that sometimes we have to even kick them off of Slack and Zoom to be like, no, go self-care for yourself, because they're always checking in on us. But just the modeling, and not just with our group, but I'd be remiss not to also mention our comrades and siblings at the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, the Coalition Against Sexual Domestic Violence, who happen to also be our fiscal sponsors, by the way. Huge shout out to them, because our work as a nonprofit would not be possible without their support, and others that we got to be in relationship and community with. We worked collectively, and when we were too tapped out, and maybe our team couldn't get something, somebody else's team picked it up and ran with it. And it was just incredible to see how people moved and navigated more fluidly, really breaking down silos and working together. Other folks who were involved in that was the Southwest Idaho Now and the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. We just love all of our comrades, and I feel like we're modeling just how we can be more collective and working from that space of abundance and not scarcity, not being territorial, and just looking to see what we can do together. Sometimes it feels like in Idaho, we're small, but we are mighty. And we move some mountains this session and community building and what that looks like to share resources and really kind of hold that sacred responsibility to each other. And I think it really made a difference in the way that we did the work. We're tired. We're definitely tired, especially towards the end, carrying, helping support some of the work around supporting the survivor of sexual violence at the hands of an Idaho state legislator. I don't think you could talk to anybody without them saying, you know what, I'm not okay. But we've all really tried to go above and beyond to take care of each other, and that resilience is definitely formed and the stamina is there. So when you're giving money and you're making contributions this week, we would love to have your support because we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. We're going to keep trying to find a way to plug that money directly back in to our community where it is needed, whether it's mutual aids or emergency stipends or supporting youth activation and engagement, just really whatever the community is calling for. I don't know that we're going to be out of the woods when it comes to mutual aid for a while. We still see a really big need for that. And we have certainly done everything we can to, I would say, Jen, operating at a bare bones budget. Like, what are the bare bones to keep our PO box open, to keep our website up, and then the rest is turning and being flipped into mutual aid. Do you want to add anything to that, Jen, just as far as when folks are thinking about contributions this week?
Yeah, obviously we were paying for Ray and Nisha because we're not fans of asking people to do work without paying them for their time. So obviously some of our money went there, but I know that Nisha and Ray were both like, who needs to eat and who needs coffee, and we're taking care of community all constantly. And I think just naming that what we're striving for, yes, it's add the words, but it's liberation for everyone, right? Like, until we can all thrive, none of us can thrive. And that is just the reality. And so really trying to figure out how to model our practices, model our engagement, and model what community accountability looks like even as well is something that I think we're really all taking to heart. And I personally loved it because like Ray and Nisha were legislative strategists, but the other title was liberation cultivator, right? Like, how do we create this thing that we all want and we all want to experience, and we can like feel it, it's like there, and like we might not get to experience that in our lifetime, but holy, like, yes, like we want our descendants to experience that. So what can we do now to help us get there? And it's sometimes, I guess it's incremental, but like we're gonna keep pushing. Like, is this really the best we can do, or can we do more? We should always be pushing to do more. We should always be feeling uncomfortable with how much we're pushing, because that means that we're actually breaking barriers as quickly as we can. So I just wanted to name that, just wanted to share my deep love and respect for you, Ray, you, Chelsea, and I know Nisha's not on here, and just the whole team, like everyone we work in community with. I don't think any of us would have survived this almost historic legislative session without the support of all of us that we had for each other. So thank you.
So much of that. That's so true. And I think adding on to that, something that you can always depend on, add the words for, is pushing the barriers and being absolutely living into the most radical form of liberation possible that we can possibly explore. And part of the reason we're able to do that is because we're volunteer run and we don't have a national organization overhead. And it allows us to really push the barriers and the boundaries where sometimes comrades and across movement spaces don't always have that same flexibility. So whatever our imaginations can come up with and can cultivate, like Jen was talking about, liberation cultivators, we're certainly trying to lean into that. So while you're making your contributions this week, again, we would be so thrilled and proud and gracious and grateful to have your support so that we can keep doing the work that we're doing. And certainly we cannot do it without your support. So We would certainly love you to consider making a contribution during Idaho Gives to add the words Idaho. I know that Jen probably already has her hot little fingers on the links ready to drop in the comments. If you can't share, you can certainly share this post with your comrades and homies. As Nisha would say, we double dog dare you. So with that, we send our love, stay hydrated, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.